when you get to the point where you feel like you're unable to contribute anymore, it's probably best to move away.
I suspect maybe your desire to go into sports administration, football specifically, comes from maybe your playing days as well.
Definitely, definitely.
So, or you trying yourself to this?
Boy, again, it's always, I mean, when I look back at just where it really began, from very early, I was kind of chosen to lead. A lot of the historical data, when I look back, when I think back about it, I say, all right, from early, go church. You know what I mean? That's where I used to spend a lot of the time because my grandmother was integral early. So reach a church and you don't know, you're on the choir, they're all about the place. I do all kind of things. But that gave a kind of leadership. You weren't afraid. Things were normal. And, that transition then to primary school where you start having a certain kind of role. But added to that was education, because you always needed education to kind of accelerate. So that move, and then go to high school, KC, again, that bring out a whole lot. So you find that very early there were kind of roles that were ascribed that required some different set of skills. But sports was always an integral part in how the skills were developed, because team, natural orientation, leadership required you needed to communicate and being vocal and, being structured, being organized.
You captain any of those teams that you...
All of them. All of them at some point when you think about it, you know what I mean? And again, it made for good countenance, because what? You're linked with the coach now, you're linked with the player them now, you become a voice, you're an intermediary, but you are still compete for your game. So there were many things that were happening all at the same time. It's like a big pot. So when you talk about football administration after that now, it was just, we wanted to make sure that things were different, change the game. Because a lot of what we wanted, if you want to say that, you needed to get it and you need to vocalize it. And you always say, well, if you're in position, then you would change things. All right, cool. By happenstance, while I was playing, I started thinking about my own life. I mean, FIFA is the ultimate objective, one of those major organizations. So FIFA, CONCACAF, NBA, NFL. So it's not even, I mean, ideally you want to say football specific, but I just like team sports. I like the orientation of teams, and I like the dynamism of sports. So it's always that kind of mix. And it allows you to express yourself in different ways. It's a nice art form. So while I was playing, I started looking at, the future. All right, cool. At university level now, yeah, you're still doing it and you're competing or playing at the Premier League level, because that was another entire whirlwind of, transition and changes. Neville Bell and Prof. Shirley, Grace Jackson, those people were integral in the whole transitional process of where we got with Huey. And then I started saying, what is my impact? What is the next move that I need to make? Sports was always it, but as you know, Jamaica and sports, there's really no serious pathway to say get into administration. So doing a sports management degree, yeah, you would love to do that, but what do you do with that afterwards? Most people didn't have a transitional pathway. So, studied management and worked in corporate, honed the skills there, and then different opportunities popped up, and another angelic voice, another I don't think it's angelic, but another rough voice come and pull me up and say, yo, let's go. That's Chris Williams, and did what I needed to do, got involved, and as them said, the rest is history, kind of fulfilling our purpose and making sure that we protect it along the way. because the requirements are real, and the expectations are broad, but the calling was there, so it's kind of how it got to where it is now, in a nutshell. That's the summary, Cliff Notes version.
So then, when you did get that shout from Chris to say, "Let's
Yeah.
go," what then was like the first thing? Because like if you ask me what I would want to change with Jamaica's sporting infrastructure, or football
Right.
infrastructure, I could give you a couple of stuff, things that I've been thinking about for a while.
Right.
So I can only imagine then someone like me, like you,
Right.
played
Right.
and actually came up through as a player,
Right.
seeing what it looks like, know what it takes to kind of make it a good space for everybody to be involved.
Right.
What actually was one of those things that you said, all right, I'm getting this opportunity, this is something I want to achieve?
Good question. As you said, there are many things that you have ideas about. This was my first opportunity of diving into the belly of the beast, for want of a better phrase. One of the things that I would say is near and dear to my heart, it's just giving opportunities to those who are willing. I didn't think that there was a pathway, like a player pathway in the realest way. So similar to how you want to become a medical doctor, you go to med school, you go to internship, you go to, all right, you want to be an accountant, you do ACCA, you want to be a pilot, you go to flight school, etc. If you want to be in sports management, or if you want to become a professional player in Jamaica, not too many pathways were there. And even if they were, nobody truly knew about them. It wasn't as celebrated. It wasn't something that people went for. Because again, you hear the basic language, oh, that is recreation, you might get injured. Focus on a career, focus on school. I'm sure every one of our parents at some point said that to us. But I truly believe in the power of sports, and I saw the industry behind sports. I saw that, even if you're an accountant, you can work in a sporting organization because they need accountants, they need finance officers, they need marketers, they need all these professionals, HR, this, that. So I'm like, so why do we think it's mutually exclusive? However, how do we get there? Not many people even know, much less can do it. So that's one of the things I wanted to kind of change, the narrative of, yes, it is a viable direction to go in, and then how? Create that bridge, provide that platform for talent to now feel, the opportunities exist, and we're matching those talents with opportunities. How would I do that? I know it would take a lot, but that's kind of like the mandate. The mission is simply just to educate and empower and to provide those bridges, and then for it to materialize in ways that we're seeing now in many instances.
So what can you point to
Yeah.
as a success story of yours? Something that, yeah, it doesn't have to be one thing obviously, but something that you can identify to say, my involvement, my being here
Yeah.
has has given rise to this.
Right. To not sounding too audacious, but also willing to be audacious. I can say that our platform and what we've done over the last 5 years has enabled a stronger bridge for players. So when you look at a Richard King, for argument's sake, I feel specifically good knowing that I was a part of that transitional process to get player A, Richard King, from local soil to international soil. I mean, when I just actually started, there are a few other players who made some significant shifts. Trevante Stewart. When you look at it, the Lamar Walkers, they moved in and out. But Richard King, for me personally, was like an accomplishment in my mind, because I'm like, I saw where this is coming from. I kind of, facilitated in terms of us commercializing the league and putting more eyes on like Cavalier. They've done well significantly because of their natural internal skill sets and coaching abilities, etc. But putting that all together and seeing, oh well, there is a pathway and it actually works. And to know seeing Richard a starter on the national team, doing pretty well at an international level. So it's not a fluke. It's not, oh, one hit wonder kind of thing. It actually makes sense. And like I said, if, you can create that conveyor belt where anybody can look on and say, I want to be him. I think that's a good one. And outside of that, there's another accomplishment that I felt really good about was just seeing the growth of the Premier League, you know.
Has grown.
As a player, I remember playing to, stands that are empty pretty much. To now being a part of it and seeing a kind of vibrancy and a resurgence. And there was that point before, when I was a junior and used to watch back then, that late or mid 90s, that crop of players, and I was a student at the time and used to watch it, to now feel like I'm a part of that history again, because people have said it and you've seen it when you look in the stands, when we have the super finals, when you have the playoffs, when you see these games. I mean, I remember my first real experience was not even in Jamaica when it came on to execution of a Premier League event. We were in New York, brainchild of Chris Williams, former chairman, but yeah. And then, to know that we did Boomel Classico and we got Arnett rocking, about 6,000 people down there, Waterhouse Arnett, pre-season game, and I'm like, wow.
I don't think anyone would argue that this, if we start from maybe 2-3 years ago,
Yeah,
to now is a new epoch in the
yeah,
Jamaica Premier League.
yeah. And I mean, sometimes your head really just down because we're doing the work. We don't spend the time to lift up and look around and be like, hey, this has been, an achievement or an accomplishment. But I can tell you, I feel the love, when you have security guards, when you have, the newspaper man checking in and say, bossy, what go on? Do you know what I mean? How the thing look? Right. And, those are the people who ultimately give you the impetus to say, yes, you're walking in purpose, you're doing what you need to do. And, it makes for work to be easier. You feel like you can go even when you see a lot of challenges in front.
And it's, I'm glad these are challenges because it's not all been smooth road. There have been ups and downs beyond your control.
Bruh.
Let's talk about one of those first, though. The biggest one of late is the loss of a broadcast sponsor, or partner, I should say.
Yeah.
How do you navigate something like that?
Boy, I tell you, it's so difficult. Even now, still kind of reeling from the whole thing because, again, like I tell you, industries behind industries, ecosystem. When we say ecosystem, it's not a joke, because you have different parts that are moving that make the thing work. So I didn't understand too much about television, even though I worked in television at one point. I was on screen, commentary, etc. So when you look at my own timeline, I've done pretty much a lot of work behind the scenes and then in front the scenes. But losing SportsMax as the partner at the time, I don't think anybody truly understood the impact that it would have had. Yes, there were, comments and, we tried to strategize as best as possible as a unit, but it really left a major void because, as you can imagine, going to market to find a broadcast partner in a tightening economy that has shrinking resources, but at the same time ballooning expectations. It ran counter to where we were at the time. It's not that we're financially strapped with a lot of cash, so we could just throw investment monies here or there. No, we had to be skillful and careful in how we're crafting our approach to market, because we know, again, the product is built commercially around television. It's a television made product. So we needed to have people on camera. That's how a talent will be seen. And remember, we're talking about creating pathways, sustainable pathways. So the loss of SportsMax and the timing, it really put a lot of pressure on us. But again, the resilience of the people came through. We stuck to it, had a lot of war discussions about just how we're going to do it. Some decisions were not necessarily unanimous because it was we need to get it done. Let's figure it out. I'm happy to say right now that we seem to have a stable, solid partner for the foreseeable future. Still some kinks that need to work through, but the key is the growth that we've accomplished out of this entire process is just immeasurable. And my own learning from it, that's something you can't take from me, because I think I understand a little bit more about just creating the sustainable networks that are required to professionalize sports in Jamaica. Yeah.
And one of your personal challenges, I suspect it's a challenge,
Yeah.
would be the news that broke at one point that you're leaving. What was that all about? Because you had some people up in arms. How you put down tools at this time?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one, because again, I think this is my calling. There are too many people, too many examples of proof that this is. So, it's running counter to that is always a challenge. Now, my thing personally, I've always said, when you get to the point where you feel like you're unable to contribute anymore, it's probably best to move away, So there was a point where I was pushing really hard and I just felt like I was out of steam. I don't have the support. Things were topsy-turvy at the time. And, I like giving it my all. Excellence is the bar that I'm always searching for. So I felt like I wasn't being excellent in the craft. And it was a tough one just to kind of had, a discussion internally. So, I mean, I submitted a document for an internal discussion because it was never meant to be a external kind of blow up. But that also reminded me that the calling is greater. The responsibilities are, and it's more of a privilege. So the pressure that I face, I would say, is like a privilege to have. And, after having discussions with my mother, with my wife, the decision was, and then obviously internally, making sure there was a new chairman coming in at the time, and then some key board members. The decision was, all right, let's give this all you have left, and do it the way that we know we need to do it. Because again, the mission was always sustainable player pathways so that we can benefit from it. So I'm here, and I'm doing the work. I keep doing the work. It's probably not as public the way that, the initial news would have broke about me stepping away. But I'm here. And I've always said it's never about me. It's about creating an ecosystem that is sustainable and viable. So I continue to do the work behind the scenes, and I continue to make sure that I give it my all every single day.
What does your role actually look like? Let's say on a day to day. So today we were gonna be up and down with you if you're up and down.
Yeah.
But like, what would your role actually entail? Say one week.
All right. So I'm the CEO, which requires, well, I'm the CEO of a professionalization company, a commercially professionalized company for football. Sounds convoluting a little bit, but the point is we're trying to professionalize local football in tandem with the Jamaica Football Federation as the governing body. And this is for the elite teams, Premier League teams. So ultimately, what we're trying to do is to create an entire framework that supports commercialization. Now, what does commercialization look like? Well, you need to have different elements, television being one. So, contract negotiations, execution of televised games, creating standards that are, comparable worldwide, and maintaining those standards. Television, earning commercial revenues, rights fees, etc., from the product that you're creating. And that's one element of commercialization of football. Um, Player sales. Have to make sure that, for clubs to earn, then, players need to be transferred out. We're a source market for talent, as you can see. A lot of people are coming to us. So it's having those deal negotiations early, prompting people to look at the league, get us, in a creditable zone, so that more and more people can leave. So that's another one. Competition, making sure that the competition is actually commercially viable. So while the games are played, we have to make sure that the teams are facilitated through that process and creating commercially viable options, i.e., through their kits, offering spots, adding value. And commercialization can be just kind in how do we make money so that we can give the clubs so that they can be sustainable. Um, and then just making sure that the sponsors who support, because it's a win-win situation, you're offering most times cash or products in support or in space off or in, you know, trade off for exposure and, brand affinity and those things. So protecting those relationships so that there's a win-win, a mutual, win for both parties that are involved. And then, pulling that all together while steering a ship with 14 different entities, which are the clubs, creating those stakeholder linkages between the ministry and the federation and, the heads of the clubs, and just administratively getting people in position so that for the 44 football weeks that exist on the calendar, we deliver week in, week out. So it's a lot of moving parts, but at the strategic level, it's looking beyond, and then at the operational level, is making sure that every match week is coordinated and executed. Yeah, yeah, getting a call. Hello. Hi, how are you? I'm good. I'm good. I'm here, doing a quick interview, um, talking about the impact of the Jamaica Premier League and what we're trying to do.
Some people complain that, we're losing our best talents. They don't see it as we're, um, as I said, a source market
Mm-hmm.
for clubs. Personally, I don't see an issue with that. It's just about managing expectation. Because if you're expecting that we're gonna rival the English Premier League, you might be
Yeah,
a little too
yeah,
up in the clouds with that one. But if you're knowing that, look, we're gonna have our talents develop here, and they're gonna go on to bigger and better things, and that only, in turn works out for our national team,
right,
then I'll never have a problem with that.
right,
That's just the pathway,
right.
and that's fine. Um, so what I'd want to know though is why not say, and I don't know if this is something you've already discussed internally or if it's already in place, but why not say make it even more developmental as a league by, establishing some sort of rule, some sort of structure where teams have to include certain players, say under a certain age or whatever. So it's like our best talents coming from the Manning Cup, for example. We know every team must have at least three 18 to 22-year-olds,
Hmm.
and then they must have another two or three under 25,
Right.
right? And they must be a part of the first team squad. Or I mean, you can't really tell a team how to run their team,
Right.
but you must stipulate that they must be a part of the setup
Yeah.
because that's the only way we can actually improve on the youth,
Right.
but also hit that same target of getting players out there. And it can only benefit us, like I said, if we get some of the young players out there sooner and they
Yeah.
come back to the national team with that experience. So,
It's a good point, and quite frankly, we actually are doing some of it right now. Um, and that's a regulatory matter, but it obviously is driven from a strategic perspective. If you think about it,
right.
it means that everybody has to sit around a table, an invisible table, and there's a meeting of the minds to say, guys, while this may not benefit everybody in the first instance, this is a strategic play that we're trying to make. Yeah, we're looking at how do we get our best talent earning their best possible, potentially their best keep, but at the same time being of value to us, in the long run. Um, I think the league provides that opportunity. Are we capitalizing on it the best way possible? I think a lot of teams individually are doing it.
Right.
The model is slowly becoming very evident amongst the other teams. So when you look at how Cavalier has done their business as a football club, when you look at how Mount Pleasant has done their football business as a club, the newly revamped Montego Bay United, Portmore United, Harbourview. Those are clubs that they've always been there. I mean, Mount Pleasant most recently and Cavalier kind of has set the pace. Um, but they've understood that for us to get the best talent out, we have to expose them earlier. And I keep using the word ecosystem because it's really an interconnected set of parts. So the coach now has to understand that while winning is the objective, development is also the objective. So we're twinning those realities to say, yes, I need it to win, but I also need to have talent being exported and we're earning so that we can develop through a youth or an academy system and make sure that we always have talent because again, our market right now economically is unable to absorb the highest or the top talent. You don't want to be able to hold that talent in Jamaica when the talent can be earning way more elsewhere. So the early expose the talent and then pass that talent on to, a more developed market, I think it's better for the clubs.
And the idea of winning but developing, they're not mutually exclusive, but it surely must make the job more difficult from a coach's perspective, from a team management perspective, but even from the league's perspective as well.
Yeah, because the quality that is on the pitch at any given time may not be your best quality every single day. However, again, you kind of raise the bar through the exposure. Um, that is why you now need better coaches to understand the nuances. A mature player versus a young starlet. A lot of the international teams do it when you look at how the blood young talent and how they fuse that, mix. Most times, even from a positional perspective, you find that, your more stable and senior players are defenders and goalkeepers, and then the ones who are vibrant and are in attack, and those are the younger players. Those are the ones who try a lot of things, and it may not work all the time, but if you allow them to play into their skill sets, then it augurs well. So it definitely is a difficult task, but it is where the world is. So we're kind of 3, 4 steps behind the world. So if we want to actually create a professional industry, then that's the only that's the only place that we can go. That's the only pathway that we can choose. And then culture. Culture is a hell of a thing. Very difficult to change. And I think our culture has slowly evolved where people are now understanding the viability of having a kind of synergy. So you see where clubs are linking with schools, you see where there is that tactical approach where they're moving together as a group. So the team who has the senior coach also has a junior coach, and it's a link. There's a philosophy that is being spoken of generally about how coaches operate. So they oftentimes move in groups now. So your goalkeeper coach is also a part of your squad. Your, like I say, assistant coach who might just be second team, and fringe players, and then your head coach, and then you have a technical director who kind of package it all. So we're making strides. I can tell you that much. I mean, now when you hear of the titles and you see the minds who are in the sport, we were talking offline about, like an Andrew Peart. When you look at an Andre Waugh, Andre Virtue, a Rudolph Speed, a Tappa Whitmore, and then the history coaches who have done it, over significant periods, the Lenny Hydes and the Teagat Davis and the Ludlow Bernards. And when you look at how they've done it, the Bertis Bell, a lot of them have pretty much laid the foundational work. And I mean, I think it's going to get better. Based on what I'm seeing, it definitely is getting better. Now, there are some other missing elements that, has slowed the development. We're talking about the facilities. We're talking about the actual infrastructure supporting that,
Right.
Nutrition, dormitory facilities, things that will create team environment that you can easily pass on messages and create a kind of framework. I think Craig has done that well with Phoenix and his own setup. He has corralled everybody and created a unity amongst them, and you see results. So different models along the way, but the vision is the same, and you can see where it all kind of meets at a intersecting point. And so far, I think it's working.
I'd say it's working. We're trending upwards as a league for sure, and no more evidence is that than with the Caribbean Cup.
Yes.
With our clubs being finalists 3 times on the track.
Yo, let me tell you something. Again, I think it's also a part of how competitive we are as a nation. So the minute you tell us that, hey, there's this opportunity and somebody actually did it and kind of created a blueprint, because Cavalier did it. Prior to Cavalier, you had Portmore, you had Harborview, who they were in CFU tournaments and they've been there, truth be told. But in this newly revamped format where financial incentives are greater and exposure becomes the current, everybody wants to get there. And when you get there, you know that this is where you're now amongst the best of the best. This is the Caribbean's elite, and then it becomes now the region's elite. So when you go into the Champions Cup, and again, what you saw last year with Inter Miami and the whole, feeling that gave us as a nation.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be there. That's the standard now. If you're a team and you're not aiming to be in the Caribbean Cup and then move on to the Champions Cup, and you're probably aiming too low. And like I say, that's the gold standard right now. So you see the growth, and I mean, I'm happy that I'm a part of that period where I'm seeing it, because it gives you real hope. And now I can comfortably look at anybody and say, hey, here is a pathway. If you do A, then B, then C, chances are you're going to see D. There's a high probability that no more evident than what you see happening now with the Caribbean Cup and, Champions Cup.
You want to shout out the name sponsor?
Um, sure. Generally, we, we definitely know that most of this would not be possible without some key stakeholders. Start with the government, the ministry, the federation itself, because again, we are acting as agents on their behalf, and then the sponsors who continue to plug resources in. So, title, league, and, individual commercial partners, we are grateful because, when the country is galvanized around sports and entertainment, generally we have a more vibrant space. And like I tell you, it's a partnership. So we keep looking to provide you sponsors with that platform, and we're grateful. We're extremely grateful, and we continue to hope that you keep supporting us.